Okay, I believe we're live and I'm recording, so.
At this time, I'd like to call the special meeting of the Guyana City Council meeting here on December 28th, 7 o'clock. It's now 7:04 to order, and it was called, special meeting was called by Dr. Fellner, Aaron Ivy, and Tammy Sinclair Earlston. First, we'll have the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
of the United States of America,
Okay.
and to the
Republic which stands a nation of God, indivisible, justice for all.
Justice for all.
for all. Thank you. Before we have roll call, I'd like to certainly welcome Kara Alt to the city council here. Pleased to have you apply and be appointed here. Looking forward to working with you, Kara.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, council members.
Ms. Alt,
Here,
Mr. Botkins. No, you're muted there, buddy. All right, Mr. Botkins,
Yes, here.
Ms. Earlston,
here,
Dr. Fellner,
Here.
Mr. Ivy,
Here.
Mr. Richard,
Here.
Mr. Triplett.
Here.
Be noted that all 7 council members are present for the special meeting. Next, we'll have roll call of elected officials and safety service director.
Mayor O'Leary,
Here.
Auditor Baldinger,
Here.
Director of Law Palmer,
Here.
Treasurer Sparks. I know he's here. Treasurer Sparks.
I'm here.
Okay,
I'm here. I don't know why I don't got my picture, but I'm
I'll
here.
fix you here in a second. Safety Service Director Ward.
here.
Okay, thank you. Next we'll have to add several of these, the number of these to the agenda tonight. The first one is ordinance 2020-91. We have a motion to add that to the agenda.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to add ordinance 2020-91 to the agenda.
Motion made by Dr. Fellner.
Second.
Mr. Ivy. Roll call.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes. Dr.
Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2020-91 has been added to the agenda by 7-0 vote. Next is ordinance 2020-97. Have a motion to add that. This
I'll
is-
make a motion to add ordinance number 2020-97 to the agenda.
Mr. Wilson made the motion. Have a second. Mr.
I'll
Triplett,
second that motion. Oh,
Mr. Triplett seconded the motion. Roll call.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett.
Yes.
The ordinance 2020-97 has been added by a 7-0 vote to the agenda. Next is ordinance 2020-99. I hear a motion on that one.
I'll make a motion to add ordinance 2020-99.
Mr. Triplett made the motion to add this, second by Mr. Richard. Roll call.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett.
Yes.
The ordinance 2020-99 has been added to the agenda by 7-0 vote. It's ordinance 2020-95. Your motion to add that to the agenda.
Is it 95, Julie?
No, 100.
It's 100.
You got 95 on the. I wondered why it was out of order. 95 should not be on there.
No, it says 9. There's no 95 on there.
Oh, it says, it's the amending ordinance 95, the one before,
We're-
Julie.
That's the 99 is fixing ordinance 95. The next
Right.
one's 100.
Okay, because that's what I put online. Okay, be 2020-100. Do I hear a motion? Add that to the agenda.
I'll make a motion to add ordinance 2020-100 to the agenda.
And
Dr.
I'll second that.
Second by Mrs. Earlston, roll call.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett.
yes,
Ordinance 2020-100 has been added to the agenda by 7-0 vote. Resolution 2020-20. Your motion to add that?
I'll make the motion to add resolution 2020-20 to the agenda.
Mr. Second by who?
Mr.
Ivy.
Ivy,
Mr. Ivy. Okay, roll call.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett.
yes,
Okay, resolution 2020-20 has been added to the agenda by a 7-0 vote. Now I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Dr. Fellner made the motion, seconded by Mr.
I'll
Ivy.
second.
Mr. Ivy seconded. All in favor, say
Aye.
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 aye,
Opposed likewise. The agenda has been amended by a voice vote. Okay, moving on to ordinance 2020-88. This is second reading.
Hold on here, got my, everything all mixed up, sorry. All right, ordinance number 2020-88. Entitled ordinance recognizing that certain disbursements of the city of Gallion are consistent with guidelines of the CARES Act and approving the same and declaring an emergency.
The ordinance discussion.
This came through Finance Committee and this is the second reading. There's a bit of a change in that there's something in a line in section 2 has been amended. Mr. Law Director, do we need to have a motion to change that?
Yes, what you're gonna need 2 amendments here.
Okay,
One is an amendment, as you said, Dr. Fellner, to remove the language that refers to the Chamber of Commerce, which is part of section 2. The other one is to recognize and to have the attachments amended so the attachments are part of the ordinance. They weren't there last time.
I see. Okay, the audit, so what we've done is we have enumerated where CARES Act money has been spent by the city or reimbursed to the city.
Correct. You're just indicating that all the expenses that have been made are consistent with the CARES Act. That's all this is.
I'd like to make a motion.
Excuse me, Mary, did you have something?
I just wanted 2 pieces of clarification. One on the recommendation to delete the chamber. That's really driven by the fact that any remaining CARES Act money can be carried over into December of next year. And so a decision was made not to take that last roughly 100,000 and allocate that to that. There also, I would say that I believe there were close to $320,000 that went to Gallion businesses through the Chamber's grant program. So it's not as though that need wasn't addressed. The other 2 is more of a correction. No money's been spent with the second harvest or the 2 daycare facilities. What this will do is recognize what we intend to spend and approve that. So that those are the the reasons. I wanted to make sure we haven't expensed this, but this represents 4 mobile food pantries through Second Harvest. And then the others are reimbursement for daycare of essential workers whose children have been staying at those 2 facilities. Staying's the wrong word too, but having daycare provided. So
they're commitments that the city will,
nicely said. That's a good way to put it. But I just wanted to make sure we haven't spent the money in advance of this. Fair enough?
Other discussion?
did you have a second clarification, or was that?
No, the one that the money is going to be carried over, and that's why we don't need the money for the chamber, and then the other one is letting you know what we're expensing what we're going to spend that money on.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Mr. Watt, I'd like to make a motion, a first motion to remove the reference to Galleon Crestline Chamber of Commerce in this ordinance.
Heard the motion by Dr. Fellner. Do I have a second? Mr. Botkin seconded. Discussion? Roll call?
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston? You're muted.
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
Amendment has passed by 7-0 vote. Now, Dr. Fellner, you want to make the other motion too?
Yes, I'd like to make a second motion concerning this ordinance and include the audit trail by the city of Galleon for CARES money expenditures and or reimbursements to the city.
Dr. Fellner, it's in addition to expenditures, it's also encumbrances.
And encumbrances. What are those called again? You gave it a great term. The paperwork that is following.
I don't know what term I may have used. They're the attachment representing the
Attachments. You said attachments.
Okay.
That's what I would like to do, is make that motion to include the attachments in this ordinance.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion by Dr. Fellner, second by Mr. Triplett. Discussion? If none, roll call?
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard.
Yes.
Okay, this amendment passed by 7-0 vote. Now discussion on the ordinance.
Mr. Watt, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and proceed to the final reading on ordinance 2020-88.
Heard the motion by Dr. Fellner, to suspend the
I'll
rules.
second.
Second by Mr. Bodkins. Roll call?
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
Motion to suspend the rules of this ordinance passed by 7-0 vote. Now discussion on the ordinance itself. Mr. Triplett,
I'd like to make a motion to pass ordinance 2020-88.
heard the
Second.
motion by Mr. Triplett, seconded by Mr. Bodkins. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
The ordinance 2020-91 has passed the final reading by 7-0 vote. Moving on to ordinance 2020-97. It's the second reading.
Is it 92? 92.
I don't have my chart here, right? 92, okay.
Ordinance number 2020-92, entitled ordinance adopting permanent annual appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Galion, state of Ohio during the fiscal year ending 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Okay, you heard the reading of the ordinance. Do we have a motion or a discussion on it?
What do we have on this that is an issue? I'll bring that up first. Is there anything on this particular, the attachments, or we need to make a motion to put the attachments on, don't we?
No, you already did when you voted this onto the agenda. Oh, no, you didn't. No, you are correct. I'm sorry.
No, they need to do an amendment to add the attachment.
I know, I just corrected myself. You are correct. So,
Okay. Then just to get the ball rolling on this, I'd like to make a motion to place on ordinance, 2020-92, the attachments, which includes a breakdown of the budget for 2021.
Heard the motion by Mr. Richard. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ivy seconded. Discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Motion's passed by 7-0 vote. Discussion on the ordinance. Any other discussion?
I was just going to say, I think it really behooves us to pass it. There was a discussion about whether or not the administrative support had gone up. If the total works, I would assure you that between the auditor and the mayor's office, we're not going to spend money we don't need. If people would prefer to amend that down, the budget request, I think, is it kind of moved ahead to this last step. Was it more at 459 and not 453? So
Yeah.
I think we could go either way, not amending this. There are sufficient balances to to pass this higher number. But I'm as I look at the itemized spending in the fund that's in question, that 780, I believe that 460,000 roughly is what we need to operate. So we could go either way is what I did say, Carlin. So
Any recommendation you'd have, Law Director Palmer?
Well, no, there isn't. I mean, you can amend it now. You can amend it at some point in January or you can do a corrective action at any point. You just need to decide on what you want to pass tonight. That's the only recommendation I have.
I would feel better if we would amend it because it makes the total of expenses over the revenues go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Mark or Mr. Triplett on that. I think that we should amend that. And then if something else down the road needs to be changed, we can do that then.
Yeah, I would say if you make the amended to the 459 and the appropriate totals to go along with it, then we could have that corrected that way. What do you think? Okay.
Anybody else have any comments?
I'd like to make a motion to amend it to the correct amount of 459,000 with the corrected totals to follow.
Mr. Triplett made the motion, second by Mr. Watkins. Discussion?
Was the section 7080, was that the paving issue again?
no, it's administrative support. And I can't really explain to you now where that million came from.
It was a complete typo on my part.
Yeah, okay, good, Eunice. I'm glad you're on there. It struck me as where in the heck this come from, as if we needed another wrinkle at this point. So
Totally fine. Great. Thank you very much.
Eunice, it sounds like then you're okay with amending it.
Yes, that would actually be my preference. It'll save some after the first of the year. So yes, I think it's a good thing to amend it.
I say this as jestfully as you could accept it. It's like, well, that, you know, if Eunice prefers it, then it's pretty smart. It's like, she's kind of the cook at this point. So if we want to eat, we got to keep the cook happy.
Other discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
yes,
The amendment passed by 7-0 vote. Discussion on the ordinance.
I'd like to just quickly, I was being jestful. Eunice, we wouldn't be here without the work. So the cooks are good things in my world. Second thing I wanted to point out that and it really repeats some things I'd said in committee, that we're very much ahead of many other communities. I know there's some uncertainty. I guess we would be not showing our experience if we confidently said everything is fine, but we're in as good a position as I can determine with other communities, similar towns in our size. You'll see a lot of other communities passing temporary budgets. And so the amount of work that went in to identify revenue that we could match up against our spending and then whittle away at that says a lot about Gallion's financial position in this, what's been just a horrible year. Just by way of illustration, then I'll stop. We all know at this point that we cut revenue for next year 2% from this year's estimated total. So I went back to look, and we are really off about 8% or 8.5% off of estimated revenues this year. So I can remember about a year ago, we were talking about, how to estimate those revenues. And I recall Brian being kind of conservative. Thank goodness he was at that point. But where we would have been if we'd seen the 2 or 3% growth in revenue that we had the previous handful of years, it really, if you were to graph it, it's been quite a drop off. So it's a tribute to having the resources, having fund balances that enable us to be as well situated right now as I think we could hope to be, and certainly in better shape than many other communities. So thanks for letting me make the speech. It's really a lot of hard work, and I appreciate the vote so far.
Thank you, Mayor, for your comments and an explanation there. Discussion on the ordinance. Any further discussion?
If there are no other comments, given the fact that Eunice's work is far from over for the year 2020, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules and proceed to the final reading on ordinance 2020-92.
You've heard the motion by Dr. Fellner to suspend the rules of this ordinance, second by Mr. Bodkins. Roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
We're voting on the amended ordinance, correct?
That is correct, Mark.
Okay.
You want me to restate it?
No, that's fine, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're just voting on suspension right now.
yeah.
Right.
Did you say
Okay,
yes, Mark?
Yes.
okay.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Passed by 7-0 vote, not discussion on the budget or on the budget ordinance.
I'd like to make a motion to pass amended ordinance 2020-88,
Okay, you've
dash
heard-
92.
92, sorry.
I'll second.
Second by, who was that? Mr.
Ivy,
Ivy? Discussion? Not roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Okay, the ordinance on the budget has passed by 7-0 vote. Moving on to ordinance 2020-91, this is the first reading.
Ordinance number 2020-91, entitled ordinance amending ordinance number 2019-85, permanent 2020 appropriations, and authorizing an advance to the Cheshire Debt Service Fund with such advance to be repaid in calendar year 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is an annual situation. Do we have a discussion on it?
I'll do my best, and then Gail probably has a little bit more. This is really the legislation's needed to make sure that the Cheshire Fund, the number escapes me right now, it ends the year with without a negative balance, either with a zero balance or some balance. So I think Carl's right. It's sort of an annual exercise, and the transfer just needs to get made and authorized by the end of the year.
Thank you.
You might be able to help out, or we'll hand it off to Eunice.
Yeah, Mayor, you got that pretty accurate. Yeah, we're just trying to amend this negative balance. The negative balance in the unexpended balance is 166, and then there's encumbrances out for like almost 36,000. That brings the ending balance to 202,782.19. So we're just trying to cover that for now. And then if there's any tweaks needed in January, we'll do that.
Thank you for the explanation. Other discussion?
Mr. President, if there's no other questions or comments on this, as it's already been mentioned, this is a yearly thing. So having said that, I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the rules. Ordinance 2020-91 and move it to the final reading.
We've heard this motion by Mr. Richard. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Dr. Felder, second the motion. Roll call.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston.
Yes.
We suspend the rules passed by 7-0 vote. Discussion on the ordinance.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if there's no further questions or discussion, I'd like to make a motion to pass ordinance 2020-91.
Okay, you've heard the motion by Mr. Ivy. Do I have a second?
Bodkins.
Mr. Bodkin, second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
The ordinance 2020-97 has passed the final reading by 7-0 vote. Moving on to ordinance 2020-99, first
No,
reading.
we're on 97.
Now back to 97. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
We just past
A
91.
little bit ago. Yeah, I tried that a little bit ago.
Yeah.
First reading also 97.
Ordinance number 2020-97, entitled ordinance amending ordinance number 2019-85, permanent 2020 appropriations by transferring funds and various funds as part of reimbursements for utility credits provided to customers with COVID relief funds and declaring an emergency.
Reading this ordinance, discussion.
And let me just say quickly that rightfully, we've been recognizing employees have done a lot to get legislation to council to vote on. And this, I think I would certainly be remiss if I didn't mention the three clerical staff in the billing office. So Connie Keller and Jody Harsh and Amanda Poland. I think on this particular calculation, Amanda spent a lot of hours making sure that that matched up. The question was asked today earlier why it wasn't an even number, and I think the short explanation on that is that people whose what they owed the city, what their bill was less than $100. They only credited those accounts, the $87 or whatever the amount might be. So if you were to look at that detailed audit trail, which I believe was Amanda and Eunice kind of working together, those are the credits that are in this bill. So our billing office staff did a tremendous job trying to get those credits established to the right accounts. And so between that and nobody getting their bills yet, we've got kind of a, it'll be an interesting end, as Doc Fellner had mentioned. Eunice has other things to get done before the end of the year. One of the things is we're gonna have to work through what we do with the fact that we had a low collection. We're gonna have a lot of bills coming in 2011 for services in 2000. And I said 11, I meant 21 for costs in 2020. So any event, this represents a lot of work that was done by staff, and I appreciate you letting me say that.
Thank you for explaining that. Discussion? Anything else on this CARES Act?
Mr. President,
Yes.
if there's no further discussion or questions, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and move ordinance 2020-97 on to final vote.
Heard the motion by Mr. Ivy. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Richard seconded. Roll call.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
The ordinance is motion to suspend the rules passed by 7-0 vote. Discussion on the ordinance. Mr. Triplett,
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2020-92.
7,
Evan,
7.
hey. You're following in my footsteps tonight.
I'll second.
Second. Mr. Ivy seconded.
Ivy.
Ivy, okay. Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 2020-97 is passed. Moving on to ordinance 2020-99 now. First reading.
An ordinance number 2020-99, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-95 by repealing said ordinance and to now approve appropriating property interest described as parcel 48T1, 48T2, and 48WD, now owned by United Photographing Industries Incorporated for the purpose of making or repairing roads which are open to the public without charge, authorizing the appropriation of funds for deposit with the clerk of courts, and authorizing the city director of law to file a petition for appropriation in the Court of Common Pleas, Crawford County, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Reading this ordinance, discussion.
All I would say, Carl, is that this is one of those things where we don't want the company in this case that we're filing the appropriation action to be upset. So we're suing you, but don't be mad at us. But it really is getting to a point where if we don't make this move, then we could fail to close it through a negotiation and then be too late to get this legislation done. Thomas covered this generally with 3 or 4 other parcels, but I think this is no different than that, but we had hoped we could negotiate a settlement. It's kind of unlikely at this point, so we're going to go ahead and take this action.
Okay.
Just to, if I could, Mr. President.
Mr. Palmer.
Yeah, actually, 2 of these parcels you voted on at the last meeting. What we found out in working with O.R. Cullinan, I'd like to thank Natasha and Matt in the mayor's office for working with me on this. We discovered that one of the parcels is actually not contiguous to the other parcels. And that means it has to be filed separately. So we've got this new ordinance here, which covers 3 of the 4 parcels owned by United Photographic. And then we had to spin off the one that's not contiguous in a separate ordinance. And that's the next thing you'll be seeing. So that's why you have these 2 tonight, even though you looked at these before.
Thank you.
And the reason that we're,
Dr. Fellner?
so we're amending a previously passed ordinance because there was another parcel included that was contiguous.
That was not contiguous. You can only include parcels in an ordinance and in the action that are contiguous. We discovered that one is not contiguous,
see.
so we
Okay.
had to have a special ordinance that the next one you'll see.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion on this ordinance?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and proceed to the final reading on ordinance 2020-99.
Heard the motion by Dr. Fellner to suspend the rules, second by Mr. Bodkins. Roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
yes,
Motion to suspend the rules is passed by 7-0 vote. Discussion on the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2020-99.
You've heard the motion by Mr.
I'll
Triplett.
second. Ivy?
Mr. Ivy seconded it. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Okay, passed by 7-0 vote. Discussion.
It's already done passed.
That was the second one, okay.
Yeah.
2020-100, this is the first reading and follow up to the previous one.
Ordinance number 2020-100, an ordinance appropriating property interest describes as parcel 48S, now owned by United Photographic Industries for the purpose of making or repairing roads which are open to the public without charge, authorizing the appropriation of funds for deposit with the clerk of courts, and authorizing the city director of law to file a petition for appropriation in the Court of Common Pleas, Crawford County, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Further reading ordinance, discussion.
Yes, I think Mr. Palmer gave an expert explanation of why this ordinance was by itself. And that being said, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 2020-100 and proceed to the final reading.
Heard the motion by Dr. Fellner to suspend the rules. Have a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Ivy.
Ivy?
Mr. Ivy seconded it. Roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston.
Yes.
Okay, it passed by 7-0 vote. Discussion on the ordinance.
I got a question. This one says we're gonna build and maintain a sewer. What sewer is going across?
Well, that's what the S stands for, Marcus, sewer. This is a sewer easement.
it's the one that is the lateral that connects them to our city sewer. Runs underneath the road. We had some problems with it a couple years ago.
Okay,
Has problems for the customers, but that's where it's at. So it runs from near the building at the corner across to our rather shallow sewer line right there.
okay, I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2020-100.
Okay, I have a motion. Seconded by Atkins, seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
yes,
Okay, ordinance 2020-100 is passed by 7-0 vote. The last one is resolution 2020-20, first reading.
Resolution number 2020-20, entitled a resolution approving and ratifying the prior acts of the department heads and safety service director and approving then and now certificates for said expenditures and declaring an emergency.
Heard the reading of the ordinance, discussion. Who wants to take this?
I guess that would be me.
7 óra 45 perc.
Section 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all for contracts with the health department for the contact tracing. The contracts were done and in place prior to the purchase orders being put in. So we had to do some backtracking and fix that. So those will approve those so that payment can be made before the end of the year, hopefully, because those are with grant dollars that needs to be expended. Section 5 is a follow-up, kind of like to what you guys had to do at the last meeting or the meeting before. I've lost track, but this is for the wastewater plant to pay electric bill that was held through the pandemic. So that covers, I believe it's March through July invoices for them. And I would, of course, request that this be done as an emergency, suspending the rules.
For Eunice to suspend the rules on this. There's a further discussion.
I'd
Question.
like to make a motion to suspend the rules on resolution 2020-20.
Heard the motion by Mr. Triplett. Do we have a
I'll second.
Mr. Watkins seconded it. Roll call.
Seconded. Who'd you say, Carl?
Mr. Watkins.
Okay. All right.
Roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
I'll abstain.
Okay, we have votes 6-0 and 1 abstention. Discussion on the resolution itself.
Mr. President, if there's no discussion, I'd like to make a motion to pass resolution 2020-20.
Heard the motion by Mr. Ivy. Have a second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Richard seconded it. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
I'll abstain again.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Okay, resolution 2020-20 is passed by a 6-0 vote with 1 abstention. That includes the legislation for tonight. With the special meeting, there can be no other business. Certainly has been an interesting 2020. There's no doubt about it. You can tell by these meetings, I think we're all, thanks to the entire staff, whether it's whatever department it is, they've worked hard. And Eunice, I hope you get something to eat today, because I don't think she's even had lunch. That really dedicated here to, but once again, welcome to Kara, to our council. And do you have any comments you'd like to make? This is your chance.
I don't know. I'm just really excited to get to learn more and get to kind of explore what all of this is and get to know everyone and represent the town. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, with that, Happy New Year's to each and every one of you. And so hopefully that 2021 is kind of better than 2020 has been for everybody. So with that, Mr. Triplett, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Absolutely.
Okay, by Mr. Triplett, second by Mrs. Earlston. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed likewise, meeting hereby adjourned at, let's see what time it is here, by
48.
7:48. Again, good night and
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
thank you.
Happy New Year.